When President Cyril Ramaphosa gave the State of the Nation address earlier this year, he did it wearing a locally made business suit. The aim was to encourage South Africans to buy local and support the textile industry. He has again made a similar call. This time, the president was speaking at the South African Clothing and Textile Workers Union National Congress, currently taking place in Durban.
We reiterate our call with regard to the importance of buying locally produced merchandise, including clothing and textile products, so that we can boost our industries and create and sustain jobs. If government buys locally made goods, local production will increase and jobs will not only be saved, they will also be created. So I'm on a big drive to say in government, local is lekker. We must buy local. Because there is no need for us to go and create jobs in other countries whilst our own countrymen and women do not have jobs. So we're putting pressure that buy local, and at government level we say we must buy local. When we come to uniforms, there must be uniforms that are made here in South Africa.
Well, has enough been done to support the country's textile and clothing industry? Well, my guest tonight is proudly SA Chief Marketing Officer Happy Ngidi and the President of the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, Mamatwe Sibei. We invited SACTWU to be part of the discussion, but they declined because of their National Congress currently taking place in Durban. Good evening to both of you, and thanks very much for coming through. Well, the President says he's making the call because he believes that jobs will not only be saved but created. But over the years, we've, of course, seen a bloodbath.
Well, I think obviously that is, a lullaby to the unionists that are gathered at SACTWU Congress, who represent an industry that has been devastated by the neoliberal trade liberalization of government in the past 25 years of the ANC rule. The reality is that it is government that has been at the forefront of, importing, even where they could have, of course, stimulated the industry locally. Reality, however, is that whilst government is hypocritical on this question, what they are really asking of workers is on the basis of their poor and poverty wages to buy, products that would be expensive for them. And the reality is, it's just very hypocritical of them, because who are responsible for, many imported goods in this country? Is government, is major industries, and of course the elite, who are causing a lot of the imbalances that we see in the economy, particularly in terms of our trade deficits. Reality is, our working class people have been supporting, the local industry to the extent that that is mostly what they are able to access. However, to ask of them to sacrifice that of their mega wages to buy local for the profitability of corporations that, on the other hand, are paying them poverty wages is hypocritical, to say the least.
Proudly SA's campaigns about doing exactly what we would like to see, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And, and we are alive to the fact that there's, like my colleague here has alluded, challenges, whichever way you look at it. But from where we're coming from as proudly South African is that we have to start somewhere. Somebody's got to start somewhere. And it's a collective responsibility, really. It ceases to be, as much as all of us has a responsibility, or as much as government has a responsibility, us as a people of South Africa also have a responsibility. And ours as a campaign ours is an ongoing effort to try and use all sectors and all South African people, irrespective of where they may be sitting in South Africa, to hit the call and contribute positively to the economy. We are a buy local campaign, which is a tried and tested method worldwide. We have a responsibility as a people to ensure that our economy is strengthened and that is functional. We are alive to the fact that, many South Africans in the country, their reality is, whatever little money they may have in their pockets, the issue is not even about whether buying local or international. Theirs is about, am I able to feed my family today with the 50 rand that I have, irrespective of where the product comes from. But having said that, there's many other South Africans who can do the right thing, whether in the public sector, whether in the private sector, and many consumers as well. Because largely we see that it is a mindset issue many a times. It's a myth that our products in South Africa are inferior and that are not accessible or they're too expensive. And that's where we come in as Proudly South African, to educate South Africans about the fact that we can all play a part if we are even going to begin to deal with social ills that we see as a nation on a daily that affect all of us, rich or poor. If we even going to begin to deal with those social ills, unemployment and joblessness is where we have to start to try and deal with the reality that faces us as a people.
Now, we're focusing this evening on the clothing and textile industry specifically. What, in your view, are the challenges there? In other words, what is making it difficult for that industry to employ the numbers of people everybody agrees it has the potential of employing? What is stopping South Africans from buying, merchandise that is locally produced?
The biggest challenge that we come across is the belief and the misconception and the myth by South Africans, where they believe that anything that is produced locally is not of good quality and it's way too expensive, which is not necessarily the truth. We've got many, many great South African products that we know of as Proudly South African, where we are actively engaging the nation at every platform that presents itself to us, where we try to educate South Africans. But it is that's what it is. We just, as a people, not all of us, but most of us, think that products and services or products that are made outside of South Africa are great quality. So we're very quick to question pricing and quality. But, which is where we come in, where we say, all products that are made in South Africa that are worthy and deserving to be supported by South Africans, as Proudly South African, we vet those products. We go through the local content of the product. We go through the quality aspect of the product. We ensure that the product, the company that produces that particular product conforms to the labor laws of the country. But we also, look at your environmental standards. The reality is that if we as South Africans choose to buy products that are not made locally, as opposed to products that are made here at home, we're essentially creating a job elsewhere in another country, and we're creating a demand in the country wherever those products are coming from. What happens to the products that are on shelves here in South Africa, that are made by South Africans, our very South Africans, brothers and sisters, uncles and mothers and friends and family? Those people who work in factories here in South Africa, clothing that is then stuck on shelves, and it does not fly off the shelves because we've now created a demand in other countries where we buy the clothes from.
Now, you say the government is paying lip service to the call again the president repeated today, and they are being hypocritical. But they did come up with that clothing and textiles competitiveness program, which then helped a lot of people to be globally competitive, but also to look at how to make life easier for everybody, whether it's the retailers or the workers and everybody else. Are you saying that it is doing nothing at all, and even that didn't really make any difference?
Well, when you take, public funds to boost the profits of the private corporation, how is that really helping the working class and the poor in this country? And I think the question here that we need to be able to answer is, how do we really move this economy in a way that is able, to reindustrialize and so on and so on?
Answer that question.
The starting point is that we have to recognize that the fundamental crisis in this country is the poverty of the masses and the working class. And I think for business to come here was having lobbied, for a national minimum wage that condemn and legislate the poverty of the working class and majority of people who could create a domestic market for a lot of manufactured goods. I mean, how many people in this country, how many households can afford, a basic washing machine, can afford, a television set? The kind of things that if the majority of the population could afford would create a vast market on the basis of which a manufacturing industry can be possible, linked, of course, with the beneficiation of our natural resources.
Over the years, the textile industry has lost jobs, and it's been doing that throughout. Now, I want us to be very specific and perhaps try and simplify this, for us. What is it that you believe needs to be done to save jobs in this industry? What is it that needs to be done to make sure that South Africans buy products that are produced locally?
Well, I think
very real and practical.
Okay, let's start with what is a problem here. Because what you need to understand is that on the basis of capitalism, obviously South Africa is dominated by a world market. Part of the problem here is that obviously the South African government is entering into international trades, amongst others with China, which is give and take. And that was a basis on which there was a devastation of the clothing and textile industry. What are we saying? We believe that the only way in which we would resolve the problems in our economy, as I've said, in respect of the manufacturing, first and foremost, improve, the conditions of the working class out of the poverty, that you could be able to have the market for the manufacturing industry and manufactured products in this country. Secondly, the economy needs to be planned in a way that begin to allow us to address some of the imbalances where we export, a raw material without possibility of beneficiating, again, because of a lack of that domestic market for manufactured industry, for manufactured products and so on. But I think for me, that says we've got to rethink the economy completely. And planning just on the basis of private property over the key sectors of the economy is impossible, because all these multinationals that dominate our economy are part of the worldwide market, in respect of which a neo-colonial capitalist economy that is South Africa is hopelessly incapable of asserting terms over a terms of world trade. And that is a reality, and that is the reason that for all that talk at the Congress of South African, of SACTWU, jobs are going to be lost. What would remain of the manufactured or clothing and textile industry will be devastated. We say nationalize the key sectors of the economy, plan the economy, make sure that you improve the lot of the working class on the basis of decent minimum wages, on the basis of creation of decent jobs for many of our people who are unemployed, and on that basis, you can be able to build economy that is inclusive, economy that is for all and for the benefit of the great majority of our people in this country.
Very quickly, Happy. Input costs are a big factor in this sector. And then added to that is the issue of import duties. Are you able to have conversations with those in power to say, these are just among the stumbling blocks to what we are trying to do here? Because, is the DTI, for example, effective in monitoring, imports to ensure that there's compliance, to ensure that, there's no unfair and business practices, but also illegal imports from China?
Yeah. And That's exactly what we do as an advocacy campaign.
There's one thing to say, buy local, buy South African.
Absolutely,
but if there are,
what is being done about it? As a country, we cannot operate in isolation. So there's realities of imports and exports. And your question was also around the fact that are we then able to influence decision making or policy making? There's a lot of work that the DTI does where we don't have the carte blanche as a campaign to change things around. However, we've got opportunities to engage the people that matter, for a lack of a better word, the people that that make up policy, to where we create different platforms to talk about all sorts of challenges that the industry faces, where we have all sorts of engagements where we talk to the public sector, for example, where we, and for us, it's a reminder, where we engage the public sector and remind them about the obligation they have as public servants to ensure that they drive up localization and they do the right thing. Where we get in one room all experts and from different sectors, or this sector in particular, to unpack issues in that particular sector. But in the work that we do, there's a lot of retailers who do great work, to drive up localization. That it probably is not in the public domain, but that's where we come in to try and, demonstrate the work that they do behind the scenes. There's a lot of corporates that have committed to, given the job summit that happened last year, and who have done incredible work throughout the months since the job summit. So to ensure that the job summit was just not a talk shop. There's retailers whose localization drive is commendable, and it's great work. The likes of the Edcon, the TFG groups, Mr. Price, who have large factories where South Africans are employed, multinationals who have been in the country for over a period of 100 years, who have employed thousands and thousands of South Africans, who have supported thousands of households over the period of, whichever time they've been in South Africa. So there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes. We are alive to the fact that there will be challenges. But like I said, it becomes everybody's responsibility, collective responsibility, to ensure that we realize the difference that we would like to see as a people.
Okay, let's hope these conversations do indeed continue and no one pays lip service or is being hypocritical about this. That's where we're going to leave it, unfortunately. Thanks to both of you for coming through this evening. Chief Marketing